Hi there, I'm Martha Van Dam and this is Living Beyond, and welcome to Breast Cancer Awareness Month. You are about to be inundated, I am about to be inundated by pink things everywhere. There will be pink in the stores, there will be pink in the little grocery bags in your store. In my store, the bags in the produce department will be pink. In my drugstore, the little medicine bottles, the tops to the medicine bottles will be pink. There will be pink everywhere. And we are going to be hearing one thing over and over and over again. Actually, two things. We're going to see breast cancer awareness, and we're going to see mammograms save lives. Well, first of all, to breast cancer awareness, I'm relatively certain that by now we're all aware. I'm pretty sure you're aware. I know I'm aware. So the talks, the little tidbits, things that I'm going to speak to you about in the next month are not about breast cancer awareness, because we're aware, you know about breast cancer. But there is a whole world of other information connected to breast cancer that I'm willing to bet you don't know about, because it's things that are not spoken about. And the first one, starting today, for the foundation, is that there is a type of breast cancer that does not show up on mammograms. So the idea of mammograms save lives, that is so true. And it is so wonderful if we are talking about certain types of breast cancer. In other types of breast cancer, particularly inflammatory breast cancer, 90% of the time, that will not show up on a mammogram. Would you like to know why? Easy answer. Because 90% of inflammatory breast cancer cases do not present with a lump. No lump at all. So there's no lump to show up in the mammogram. Inflammatory breast cancer acts different. Instead of the cancer cells clumping together and making this nice little solid lump that they can go in and take out and be done with, inflammatory breast cancer makes more of a diffused webbing sort of thing. It's more like cotton candy, and it's diffused in the skin of the breast. And since it's diffused, then it's not all clumped together so tightly. So it makes it more difficult to see. That's one piece of it. Another thing is that it makes it easier to spread. So inflammatory breast cancer is more difficult to find. Again, it does not show up on mammograms. So every time in the next month that you see on a board somewhere online, you see the phrase, mammograms save lives, I want you to think to yourself, yes, they do, except in the case of inflammatory breast cancer. And I have to be my own advocate with inflammatory breast cancer. I have to look out for it myself. And I want you to know, as I have now learned, we need to know the symptoms. We need to know the signs so that we can recognize them. And sadly, since it's really not stressed much in medical school, and many of the physicians never come in contact with it, then it is unto us to be sure that we're getting a good diagnosis, that we're getting treated the way we need to be treated. If you end up with a doctor, if you seem to think you have some of the symptoms and your doctor doesn't want to take it seriously, then I'll talk about that in a minute, but it will be pretty important for you to get a second opinion and have someone who does understand inflammatory breast cancer check you over and rule that out. Now, let's see. What are the symptoms of inflammatory breast cancer? Like I said, no lump. So what generally people show up with is something that looks like a rash, a pink area. It can be anywhere from pink all the way to dark purple. So variations of shades that weren't there before. One of the major things to remember is that if a change occurs, something that your breast has not had before, a way that your breast looks different, it might be normal for somebody else's, but it is not normal for yours. That is something to get your attention. So a change in color, pink all the way to purple, a bump that may look almost like an insect bite, an itchy area, a painful area, especially if these are combined. So a bump that's itchy that won't go away. It's not a mosquito bite. It's been there for 2 or 3 days and it just doesn't seem to get any better. We want to get that checked out. Your nipples can change. They can get discolored. They can be inverted a little bit, change shape. They can ooze fluid. like a pussy kind of fluid or a bloody kind of fluid. I know that's not very fun to think about, is it? But if you notice something like that, get thee to the physician and get thyself checked out. Another pretty common one is swelling of some kind. An awful lot of women will notice that around the time of their period, it may feel like their breasts swell. It can feel like that, except it's only one breast, and that doesn't usually happen when you're about to have a period. So that would be a sign for you to notice. So the swelling, and then also with the swelling can sometimes, or sometimes not, but the texture of the skin can show. There's a name for it, a little French phrase called peau d'orange, which means peel of orange. No, I'm sorry, skin of the orange. And you know how an orange skin will have like little dimples all in it. Well, the breast, when it swells a little bit, the texture can change. And what you're seeing is the little pores that have, as the breast has swelled, it makes those pores more visible, but it ends up looking kind of like an orange peel. So any of those things, any combination of those things, those are things to look for. Now, I would like to share with you, without being too terribly personal, that the way my inflammatory breast cancer showed up was such a tiny, tiny little bit of color. First of all, I'm very light complected anyway. And one morning, the underside of my breast, I just noticed it creeping up the side, was just this light pink. It kind of looked like maybe I'd spent a little time out in the sun just long enough to get a little pink, not a sunburn, but just a little pink, the kind that you would go, oh, look, I think maybe I got a little sun, just that light. It was not a clear delineated mark. It was just a little light under there. And I knew I had not been laying upside down naked out in the sun, besides which it was October. So that shows up overnight. Also, one more symptom. The signs tend to show up, boom, real fast. So if you see any of these symptoms, especially a combination of those symptoms, immediately contact your physician, whether it's your family doctor or your gynecologist. If those are the doctors you would use for breast care, get to that doctor. What that doctor will need to do is they will generally go ahead and order a mammogram. We've already discussed that. And what you're going to find is 90% of the time, nothing's going to show up. But then also they'll often order an ultrasound, and the ultrasound will go beyond the breast. The ultrasound will look up underneath the arm. And what we find is that with inflammatory breast cancer, at the time that it can be detected, then it has moved into the lymph system, the lymph nodes under the arm, and that can often be seen with ultrasound. Also, there can be MRIs will show it. It can be detected that way. So the important message for today is there is a type of breast cancer awareness called inflammatory breast cancer. It does not show up in 90% of the cases with a lump. In 90% of the cases, it shows up with, or 100% of the cases, it shows up with something on the exterior. It may additionally have a lump, but what will get your attention is the something on the outside. A color, a shape, a bump, a something on the outside. If that happens, immediately go and see your physician and have it checked out. If you question that they seem to be dismissive, they seem to just put you on antibiotics, but you don't feel like that's all that it is, please go be seen for a second opinion with another doctor. And I cannot any more highly recommend to you that your best chances are if you get your second opinion. If you can get your first one, all the better. But if you need a second opinion, go to one of the inflammatory breast cancer specific clinics in the country. There are 3 that are well established and 1 that is in the process of getting established. MD Anderson, the best one in the country. It's the one that's been really working on this. Lots of research happens there. From MD Anderson, many of their people have gone out and have established other places. There are people at Dana-Farber in Boston, IBC specific. They work with it. They recognize it. Good place to go. Duke in Raleigh-Durham, North Carolina. Wonderful place to go. Researchers, people who know inflammatory breast cancer. And there's a new division starting up at Sloan Kettering in New York. So Let's see, MD Anderson is in Houston. The rest of them actually happen to be somewhere along the East Coast. So that does make it a little more difficult for our West Coast people to get to an IBC specific center. And one more thing to add in, inflammatory breast cancer can be more difficult to detect in women of color. I do not know why it can be sometimes also more difficult to treat. Black women, brown women tend to have more trouble with their treatment. I do not know if there's anything genetic, any sort of genetic component that may lead into that, but clearly it can be more difficult to notice a slight change in skin color the darker a person's skin is. So this is very important for all of us. It is especially important for our women of color to understand that this particular diagnosis can be difficult to find with darker skin. So all the more important to be aware of changes. Look for shape, texture, anything like that that's just different for you. So breast cancer awareness. Number one today, there is a type of breast cancer. It is the most aggressive type of breast cancer. It is the breast cancer most likely to metastasize. It actually has the highest death rate. And we absolutely need to know about this one as women. Inflammatory breast cancer. And by the way, we have our own ribbon. It's not pink. It's coral. I don't know if you can tell the difference, but I'm wearing coral today. And coral is representative of the inflammation. Pink, the ribbon itself has three colors, pink, coral, and black. The pink, a nod to breast cancer. The coral, a speak out to the inflammatory portion, and a little black line along the edge as an honoring call out to our sisters, so many sisters who have gone ahead and have died before us, before treatment was understood. So please know, inflammatory breast cancer, it could save your life or the life of someone you know, someone you love. Okay, now you're aware. Don't forget it. Bye-bye.